Where is he? Where is he? I feel like the Wizard of Oz. I'm this little person, and she makes it look so fascinating and so wonderful. But thank you for coming this morning. I really appreciate your being here. I would like to apologize at the beginning for insulting some of you. I want you to know that by power of the authority granted in me by the Niagara Frontier Culinary Institute and Niagara Falls Community College, I pronounce you all excellent teachers. So you're already good at it, you're already wonderful at it, and I mean that seriously with my heart. I'm going to talk about a bunch of things, but some of them may be boring or redundant, etc. But like most of us, we forget some of the things that we do well and we take it for granted. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things that may be new for some of you, it may be repetitious for others, and it may be a sort of a new angle on some of it. So we're going to talk about 3 S's as a way of energizing our classrooms, because that's a big piece of what we do. One of the things that I'm most favorite quote is not that bad quote about those people who do and don't do and the people who don't understand anything teach. I think those who do, who know, do really understand are the ones who teach. And the best thing about us as teachers is anything that was hard for us to learn. Because we're much better at teaching something we had to struggle through. If it's really easy when the first 1,200 times you made hollandaise, you did it perfectly, you can't teach hollandaise because you don't know what it did, why it did it, and etc. When you've had to struggle or when you have it to learn something, you understand it much more fundamentally, and you're actually a much better teacher with that kind of stuff. So I really think only those of us who understand are really good at teaching, and teaching is everything in my book. And it really is hard work, but it's hard work worth doing. I was teasing someone yesterday about, actually early this morning, I didn't see all of you on that power walk, so this must be the power talk today, because you couldn't get up for the power walk, but we were teasing about how lovely his house was, because he has an atrium like this school. And he laughed at me and he said, yeah, I'm a teacher, my wife's a teacher, what are you talking about? I said, it's all in your imagination. Your house is as lovely as you want, your classroom is exciting as you dream it to be, and always bring that positive energy to it, and it makes a huge difference. And it's hard sometimes. I know what the struggle has been, believe me. There are about 125 of you here. That's about the number of full-time faculty members I hired when I was at the Culinary Institute. I know what it's like to teach. I know what it's like to be invited into other career opportunities. So we're going to talk about what that really means. We'll talk a little bit about reflection. We'll talk about teaching strategies, teaching structures, and teaching styles. Anything you are unclear about, ask me at any time. Anything you want to talk more about, interrupt me, etc. Your examples, your illustrations are really important. So I want to start by asking you to look to page 1 of your book. And we're going to actually take a minute. I know it's hard to open the book, bring the pen out, you know, or the lipstick or the eyeshadow, whatever works for you. Chalk doesn't work on the paper, really. But it is, this notebook is for you. It has the name on the cover for you. And if you notice, on every other page, it's empty. I did that consciously. I failed the green test. But I did it so if you have other ideas today, write in it. And as you go through various workshops, you now have places to write other stuff, and you can add to what you got. And so you will have one colored notebook to keep. Because if you're like me, everything on my desk is pure white. This is beige, which is my color that I use in the business. So let's answer the first 4 questions, because they're really interesting questions. You know, who am I as a teacher? Take a few minutes and write that down. Talk about who do I want to be as a teacher? Dream, imagine, have fun with it. Just take a minute or 2 to do that. Who do I want to be? And what do I want to change? Go. Take one of those questions, any one of the 4 is fine, turn to it and share. Don't share what you don't want to share, but share. So finish that sentence. And who would like to share something they learned from their partner? Anyone? Not what you shared, but what you learned from your partner. Anyone? Please.
I'm struggling with the same thing.
Say it loud enough so they can hear you.
I'm struggling with the same thing she's struggling.
Okay. You willing to share what that is? It's okay if you don't want to.
I kind of get burnout halfway through the year.
Burnout halfway through the year.
I feel like I'm not covering everything I want to cover, and I'm not getting everything I want to get done.
You're the only teacher I've ever met in that situation. Congratulations for being honest about it. That'll help you. Next person, who would like to share? Please.
I thought this was an interesting insight from Paul. Paul here was saying that you can be as energetic and enthusiastic about the subject, but some days the students just seem to zap it out of you.
Yep. Yep.
Bring it out.
Yeah. Right on. Next person, please.
Well, Ellen and I work together, but she's baking a pastry and I'm not. But we had the same.
I'm not. You know, there's really wonderful thing like baking pastry, and then there's like hot food, cold food, other skills, knife skills. I love that. I'm the not baking a pastry person. Usually culinarians say, I'm the culinarian, you do what? Go ahead.
My husband's baking and pastry too, so I can't do that.
Oh, go for it.
Anyway, we both have the same thing. We want to make better connections outside the classroom so that, as Ellen said, you become more of a lifelong advisor or mentor. And like I said, I met somebody here that was in my class how many years ago? 22? 22 years ago. And, you know, we made that connection. So it's nice.
Wow.
And that's what you want to try
Yeah,
and focus on.
stay connected with them and build their connections. And we'll talk about that when we go to teaching styles. Good. One more share, please.
Michael is the director here, and he talked about that in our group that we were tired. We had kind of that tired attitude going halfway through the year. And Michael said it's hard when you have negativity, as being a director, coming from the top down, because you can't be positive when you don't feel like your institution supports you.
Yeah, you can be. The problem is when you got negative energy coming down, negative energy coming sideways, and negative energy coming up. Been there. I did have salt and pepper hair at one time in my life, but I don't anymore, etc. Okay, so look to the bottom of your page, and what are the 3 S's that I'm going to talk about? Please fill that out. There's 3 S's at the bottom of the page, plenty of space. What are they? Anybody? Strategies. Structures and styles. Good for you.
Oh,
Yay.
Thank you.
Okay, she got it first. So what we're going to talk about is structure, strategies, and styles, okay? And the reason I picked those 3 is there are lots and lots of things you can do. And I've done a number of workshops, and Mary, we might do something next year on burnout. Because you can turn burnout into burn up, and you can turn it into burn down, and you can also turn it into turn on. And there's a really interesting way of diagnosing what that means in your career and in your life and how you can make it. So, I mean, that's a great idea to talk about burnout in education, et cetera. But we're going to talk about structures first. And a couple of things I'm going to go through is to talk about what you can do to make the structural thing work for yourself. And I'm going to do it in 3 different categories. We're now on page 2, moving fast through our notebooks, okay? And the idea is that if you really use a structure, it helps immensely in what happens in that classroom. And one of the things that we forget to do is to remember to plan the start as well as to plan the end. Now, Susan, of course, because she's married to a baking pastry person, knows that you always pay attention to the end. That's why pastry chefs, when you go to a restaurant, say, let's have dessert first, because you never know what's going to happen in life. But really, what we do is we often are good at starting things, but we're not so good at bringing it to a culmination, to the second piece, to the ending piece. And what you got to really think about in structure is to plan the end of the class as much as you plan the beginning of the class. But how many times have you been in a class in which you ran out of time, or they start to close their notebooks, or they bring out their cell phones or other kinds of stuff, and they've sort of disconnected? So it's really important to plan the ending and to plan the transition, especially when you're in culinary arts. There's a transition between a lecture or a demo and then going to their stations. There's a transition about coming in, whether you do an inspection before they come into the class, whether you inspect them during the class, etc. But we often don't talk about planning transitions. Now, many of you know, you've heard me play the harmonica lots of places, lots of times. I've learned to use the harmonica as a way of coding. We're shifting from one thing to another, especially when you've got activities and then lectures and different things back and forth. It's a physical symbol. I learned it from my daughter when she was in 2nd grade because the teacher played chords on the piano. In an open classroom, you don't call everyone together. She played chords on the piano and the kids learned to be quiet and focus on the next piece. So I do it with the harmonica. I'm not carrying a piano around with me, etc. The fourth piece is to sequence the activities around their needs and around the subject. We're often caught in a really difficult dilemma, which is we owe the curriculum, we have to cover all of this material. The thing that's most interesting and hardest for chefs to remember is that they can learn it other than from your lips. They can learn it other than from your demo. And one of the things that liberates a lot of teachers is to get a lot of video demo, and they have to watch it as an assignment. Well, with the millennial generation, because they can turn it on, turn it off, etc. But if you do that, hold them accountable for knowing that stuff at the beginning of class. And pretty soon they'll realize it's serious homework, not fake homework. One of the problems I ran into when I started at some cooking school many years ago was that a lot of the faculty members would assign the textbook and then go ahead and lecture everything that was in the textbook. And I was a very unpopular man because I kept going around and saying, don't lecture what you assigned in the textbook. But if they don't lecture, they will never learn it. I said, yes, they will, if you hold them accountable to know it when they start class. And that means some kind of a quick testing, orally asking them questions, holding them accountable, and if they want to bring their book and they needed 2 minutes to look something up, all of a sudden it transformed things. Not easily. When you work with chef instructors who think they've been the best chef instructors in the universe for a long time, and you come in and you're a simple suit. I'm not a chef. I know I'm not a chef. I don't wear whites. You know, I wear blue and whites. I wear suits, etc., and I was treated as a suit. So with respect, I said, you've got to find a way to use out of the classroom more effectively. Harder in high school situations than in colleges. Hard in all of them. Believe me, I've taught all the different levels, and it's really hard. Graduate school sometimes is the worst because they got the longest bad habits. But so you can make a change. And also change variety. Do it upside down. Teach a classroom backwards. Teach a classroom differently. And you know what? All of a sudden they come to see what that variety is about. All of a sudden they come to see. I know a lot of chef instructors who use quotes at the beginning of class or put facts up at the beginning of class. What happens is students try to get there early to see what the new fact is. And that warms them up for the class, and the structure of the classroom is already there. Because you know what happens when they come in and they're not there, they're not awake, they're not, etc. Why do you think I sat out in the doorway and said popcorn, peanuts, and seductive education? It started you thinking about this situation. Even though you're in a conversation, you started to prepare to this lecture before you got in the room. And that's a piece of what we can do that makes a difference, etc. So let's talk about structure for lectures and demos. One of the things you all do is wonderful demos. Remember, I just promised you you're excellent teachers. But how many of us love to do the demo that shows we can really do it well, as opposed to the demo that helps them learn the most difficult parts? One of the things that happens with master chefs as well as new chef instructors is that they're worried to be seen as incompetent, so they always do it right. The problem is they go fast through the difficult stuff and go slow through the easy stuff. How many times have you watched someone teach sauté in which they talk about sauté as a dry cooking method, and we use these kinds of oils, and we use this kind of temperature on the stove, and here's the burner on the stove, and here's how we turn the burner on, here's why we use this kind of pan. Is it a sauteuse or a sautoir, and what is the difference between this? We have not yet seen food. We have not yet got into the cooking thing, etc. So start by doing it backwards. Show them the cooked product and say, how did we get to that product? We did it this way. How do we get that sauce? and they go backwards with questions, it changes things. My favorite story about a demonstration was at the Culinary Institute. I was observing teachers, and these students came in, and they were all doing a lovely job sautéing, and I noticed they put on their pans on the burner. They had a great station set up. They all walked all the way across the kitchen, and they washed their hands. Little lineup of 17 of them, 18 of them washing their hands, and they came back and did the sauté. I thought, great food safety, great sanitation, great everything. You know what? You don't have to wash your hands in the middle of sautéing. But the chef did it, didn't explain why he did it. So like good little lemmings, all those students walked over and washed their hands. They thought it was a critical element of sauté. Well, if you don't talk to people as you do a demo about what's critical and not critical, they don't learn the right lessons. They'll learn what you show them, you know. A Sondheim song is very good. Children will listen and they will learn. So think about how you orient the demo. Tell them there's 5 major parts of this demo and 3 are difficult. And then after you've done it, ask them which 3 are the difficult ones about making this dish. That's engaging their mind in the demo rather than just watching. It changes the learning process. It gets them into being active learners. It's a really critical kind of issue, right? Help students listen to lectures and take notes. You have these notebooks because it shows you a way of structuring the lectures. You notice that I've got keywords in there, but not everything. Because if you give them everything, they'll just sit back and say, oh yeah, I got the PowerPoint slides. I got the notes. I wonder what Mary's like. Is she free on Friday night? And they're all good. They go, yes, chef. Yes, chef. You know, I didn't wear a good outfit last week. No wonder Jennifer didn't want to go out with me. You know? And Brandon, he's so cute. He's really cute, but I'll never get to him. Yes, chef. Right? Because their mind wanders because they're not engaged. So you write and you record. The new work on brain research, which is really fascinating, is that the more times you write stuff out, the more you remember. Try it. If you write a to-do list when you go to the grocery store, even if you lose that list, you will buy more of the stuff on that list than if you never wrote the list down. And that's because we record it in our autonomic nervous system. It is what they're finding out now, which is actually problematic for our generation of students, is that it actually works better when you're writing in hand than on a computer. It still records more in the computer, but because of the way we process when we type and we hear on the computer, it doesn't integrate in the same way with the nervous system as it does when we're writing. So it's an interesting notion. Try it with students as an experiment, you'll see. And that adds a little more variety, a little more spice. It says some different kinds of things. So use the organizers in your lecture. Tell them what's major, tell them what's minor. Most teachers don't bother because it's so obvious. Not to students, not to the people learning. And remember, one of the things that's fascinating about our field, which I absolutely love, is every day it's brand new for them, right? They learn lipids one day, they got amino acids, another day they got calorie count, another day, et cetera, and every day is brand new, right? We got the mother sauces, that's one day. The next day we're going to do braised. The next day we're going to do saute. And we go right through it because there's so much we got to cover. And we've got to get through all this stuff. And it's really important, but it's all brand new for them. Every day it's brand new. For us, it's like, do I have to teach the knife skills again? Do I have to do saute for the 400th time, et cetera? But we've got to remember that for each one of them, it's brand new. So how do we warm them up to that new topic? How do we show what's major? How do we show what's minor? My favorite suggestions for chef instructors is always start a discussion about the mother sauces, about why they call the mother sauces and not the father sauces. And why is this not in that list? Or what's the most difficult part of braise? Why do you have a book fold? And why do you use a book fold? Why not other ways of doing it? We know that in the industry they don't do all the book fold. My God, all day like that? Not, right? We buy it, pre-done, etc. So how do we get them to think about what they're doing as they go? We ask questions. We structure those questions. And you got to build in processing time for the information. What that means is we can't throw it at them, throw them at them, because what happens is their mind wanders. And they don't know what's important, what's not important, and how to do anything with it. So what we've got to think about is how do we do that processing time? And one way is asking oral questions. One way is getting them to ask oral questions of each other. When you start a cooking process and they're all in their stations, they have to ask 2 questions of their partners before they start. Like, what are you uncomfortable with? What's the most difficult part of this? What are you scared about doing, etc. It's not public, it's private. And the buzz will start, and the teamwork starts, and it changes the dynamic. And it makes a big difference. And it takes it all off you, right? So those are the kinds of things to do with structures and demonstrations. Let's talk about the issue of activities. Because one of the things that we do a lot of in our hospitality classes or our table service classes or our other classes is we try and do active learning situations. Active learning is really difficult for students because they don't know it's learning. They think it's fun and games. So how do you teach them the skill of doing active learning? And it is a skill of doing active learning. The activity is less important than the reflection on the activity, but we spend all the time on the activity and not on the reflection. I used to argue with faculty members. I've worked in a number of schools and worked with faculty development since 1974. With all kinds of faculty in all kinds of fields. And one of the problems is they would love to show a video in class. Fills the class, there's no discussion of the video, it's useless. So what's happened is show a snippet and have a discussion, or have them watch it at home and start with a discussion. And embarrass them if they haven't got anything to say. You can embarrass people with kindness. Right? Look at Keith's smile. He's got that idea, right? You don't have to be obnoxious. You don't have to bully them, but hold them accountable for knowing that stuff, right? Right? One of my favorite activities is to go to movies or go to a play or go to a concert and then go out with my friends and have a glass of wine and talk about it. That's as much pleasure as watching the movie itself. Well, the same is true about learning. You do something as an activity, like we just did about reflection, what you get out of it is the talk about it and the reflection about it, etc. So, and you got to think about the other part is that most teachers, I'm sure none of you in the room, but many people who make an assignment and then they go, boring, don't do it. If you've got students engaged in active learning, show them with your body language that it's active learning. Walk around, observe, chat with them, see who's doing it, see who's not doing it. When I did that activity with you, I was all over the room looking at you. Some students get nervous because you're looking, and I noticed some people were writing full sentences and paragraphs. So I said, just a few words, just start, we're not going to have a lot of time, etc., so I can correct it as I go. But stay engaged. The last thing you want to do is to disengage because the message is, this is filling time, this is fun and games, happy-dappy, whoopie-diddle, right? And they don't get the message. The message is, it's real learning. And that's how they will integrate the learning because of the way they work on that situation. And make sure you plan for the reflection process. I must be in the right wing. Have to do it in the left wing. No, we're in culinarian, so we're all much more liberal and creative. I guess I don't go forward. No how. There we go. Okay. So the other part of structures is assignments. One of the things I think most of us don't think about, because we've had very, very bad examples, is how do we give an assignment? How do we explain an assignment? How do we go over an assignment? And if we tell them once, that should be enough. Well, you know that's not true because you have to tell them again. But most of us don't tell people enough about an assignment. Not only what they're asked to do, but why they're asked to do it and how it will be evaluated. It transforms the experience. I just had an opportunity to teach online, which I was sharing with Mary and Callie, is the great challenge for me because it plays to every weakness I ever had. I like to be with people, I like to work with people, etc. And I was not allowed to talk to these people in person. I was not allowed to meet these people. I was not allowed to have online chats with these people. It was all, right, synchronous, etc. asynchronous. So it was a fascinating experience for me. But what I learned is how many times you have to explain about an assignment. Now, every assignment I gave was 2 pages, single space typed. And it was reviewed here, reviewed there. What I learned is what they really need is a sample of what that's like. Because they can't ask questions. They did an email and back and forth, etc. But it was amazing to me. And so what you want to think about is, talk about the goal of the assignment, why you have that assignment. And if they've got ideas about shifting it or modifying it, be open to it. Let them participate in that process. Don't, however, become everyone's best friend like John does and whatever you want to do. I said, no, that's not possible. But this is about giving you a chance to show your knowledge in this area. If this is a better way to do it than that, let's talk about it. You decide how it's going to be evaluated. They can change the nature of the assignment. And be flexible about some of that kind of stuff, you know? But so the more documents you give them or the more opportunities to read it, you know, if you're really creative like David here, you have a YouTube video explaining the assignment, go for it, right? Or get your kids to do the YouTube video for you, right? Sarah, where are you, Sarah? Right? And see what, that makes a difference. Because it's hard to give them models. I've rejected that for years because they'll just copy it. So I learned I give them 3 models. And I tell them, you don't know what the grade was, but these are real student papers that were really submitted, and they have their written permission to share it with you. But you don't know what's good and what's bad, but at least gives you a couple of different ways of doing it. And it really opens their minds. And they get less scared and less anxious and more willing to try the assignment. So, any question about structures? Please.
Okay, where's the balance between reminding them about assignment details and being their mother? Because I teach 300 level courses, and you know, students will come to me the day before and say, "Was that assignment due tomorrow?" And I'll say, "Did you read the syllabus? Did you read the whiteboard? Did you?" Yeah, so
I do the same thing.
where's the balance?
First of all, last I looked, I don't think I'll be their mother, but you're right, you don't want to parent them beyond what they're parenting. So the question is, I remind them of deadlines every class I have. In 2 weeks, this paper is due. In 10 days, this paper is due. In a week, this paper is due. So there's no excuse. And if they come to me the day before and they say, when is it due? I said, I don't know. You have any idea? No? And so I refuse to answer the question because that's dumb. What, you know, and I say, well, you know, there's ways to find out, I think. Google it. And then they go, oh. You know, and they'll spend hours on the thing Googling, but they don't know it, right? So don't let them get away with that game because it's a game. They're not taking responsibility for it, right? Please.
I handle that way by kind of making fun of myself. I say, I'm too old, I forgot. Look it up on what I gave you. And, you know, if you make fun of yourself, it tends to get a little bit more across. And then they'll come, oh, Chef was too old to remember that's due in an hour.
I think that's a great strategy. I encourage you to be subtle about how you use it. In other words, say that I don't remember, but don't play the age card, or don't play, because we are, in fact, leaders and role models, and we should not in any way put ourselves down. So saying we forgot it is wonderful, right? And if you want a line for that, my sister taught me I had a brain freeze. I can't remember that date, right? And the idea of a brain freeze, which works in culinary field, is it thaws. You bring it out of the freezer, it thaws, right? So it's not lost. But saying you're too old, then they start to go into, well, he's too old for this, he's too old for that, he doesn't understand this. And then you know, and we do not need to apologize to our students for anything. You make an honest mistake, acknowledge you made a mistake. In fact, whoever figures out the major mistake in this notebook I gave you, I have a prize for. Person who figures out first. Please.
Can I ask another question?
No, you can't. This is not about learning.
Do you let your students text you? Do you give your students their cell phone number and let them text you? Because I'm now getting to the point where
Okay, how many people give your cell phone number to your students? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 19, 20, 21, 23, 24, 25, 26 out of 125. Okay? That's your call. Some have institutional policies on it. When I teach at NYU, I do give them my cell phone number because I'm worried if they don't come to class. I take attendance every day. It doesn't affect their grade whatsoever in the teaching I'm doing in a graduate class, but it does. I want to know if something happened in the subway or if they're not going to be there. And they often will text me about not being there. They have my email as well, and I check my smartphone, or it used to be a BlackBerry, at the beginning of class, and then I turn it off. But at least I know if someone's going to be late or this or that or the other, right? And they don't abuse it. Oh, bingo, bingo, bingo. 2 page number 9s, absolutely. And the last page number 9 is the previous one, but I forgot 2 citations. So for you, bow ties, so you don't forget. Yes, yes, teaching strategies. So let's talk about teaching strategies, okay? Second S. Yes, I think we will talk about teaching strategies today. I thought we would. Okay, so I want to talk about, there you go. Okay, some structures for teaching strategies we'll go through. I missed it, right? There we go, okay. Okay, so each of these, here's the problems with lectures and demonstrations. Please, Patrick. Oh, good. Page 3, and the mistake is? Good for you. Now we know who are the bright students, right? I don't care what he's saying, I'm going to go get that prize. So here's some of the problems we have with lectures and demonstrations. Their minds wander, they come underprepared, they don't know what it's all about until they get to the class, they don't connect this with previous experience. We focus only on the content and not on them. How many times have you seen a demonstration or lecture where people can't see it? I actually invited some people not to sit here. Glad to have them sit here, etc. But it's very hard to see the videos. Wonderful to see the stove, but it's hard to see because of the size of the vent and the way, how low it is, right? Same issue. Have we looked at when they can see you, hear you, etc.? And I think that's a really critical issue. And we don't use the structure for the lecture or the demo, so they don't know what's important, what's not important, what comes first, what not comes first, etc. I recommend you'd lecture backwards, which I try and do a lot, etc. We don't watch if they're really watching us because we're so into the demo. Or we don't see if they're paying attention, right? Because we're looking at our notes or our material or our whatever, right? So that's what happens with lectures. So here's a couple of suggestions, right? One is to create mind maps. You know what a mind map is? Mind map is a structure in which you ask them to pick a word or a phrase. Like if I said structures or if I said teaching styles, and you'll see that come up, put that in the center of a blank page, and what are all the ideas you think of about that topic and that issue? And you draw lines away from it, you draw diagrams away from it, etc. It's like a brain dump, but it sounds fancier. It's a great way to study for a subject, it's a great way to teach them, but what it does, it gets them warmed up to the topic and gets them to think what they know about it, what they don't know about it. You can say, let's do a lecture on sauté. Let's do a lecture on side stands. What are all the things you got to think about side stands? Or opening a bottle of wine, right? Or inventory control, or any topic you want, you can do it. The second is to encourage them to take active notes. Help them with the structure for their notes. You have an example of this in the notebooks that I created for you, and it makes a big difference. Use graphic organizers. Sometimes those are letters, acronyms. Sometimes those are diagrams they have to fill in, etc. I tend to try and use a lot of images. Your friend in lecturing is Google Images. Your friend in lecturing is not clip art because Microsoft has dropped it and it's no good. But you can find a lot of fascinating stuff in Google Images, and I encourage you to do it and to use it, etc. And I encourage you to have them doodle. Their minds wander, draw. That's why you have blank pages on outside of everything and extra room in each page. So if your mind is wandering, doodle a little. Sometimes, ironically, if you doodle, your mind pays attention to what you're hearing. Because a lot of our students have so much energy, the doodling focuses on that nervous energy, and they really hear what you're saying. I encourage notes are better, but if you can't, that's okay. and explain what it is. I remember I said we got the 3 S's. I made you guess the 3 S's, right, again. And if you notice, there's a big purple block introducing each section. That helps organize the notes for you, because you are learning, we hope, in this morning, okay? So that's a thing you can do that really makes a difference for them. Now I'm going to go to the second issue, which is problems and then solutions. Okay, so problems with activities are they think they're games, they think they're fun, so they just want to play with them. And they don't have any skill in participating. They don't know how to time their own group work. They don't know how to time their cooking. They don't know how to time their homework. They don't know how to time the shower. They do know how much time it takes to jog or run, or they work in the health club, but they don't have a sense of time. It's very elastic and very fluid. That's real problematic. And they don't know how to take notes in a group activity. We have to teach them those things, right? One of the things that I get a lot of pushback because I will not hand out PowerPoint slides to my students. And they get angry and I say, oh, that's wonderful. First of all, in the industry, no one's giving you the agenda with notes before the meeting. So you got to learn to take notes. 2, I talk about brain research. And 3 is I'll post the slides afterwards so you can check whether you got it right or wrong. Oh, but it's not fair. I said, yeah, life's not fair. Next. I don't want to be into this game about being a mother. I like that, sort of Mother Fred.
By providing the notes after the class, are you then discouraging them from being engaged in the class and writing notes? Because we all know the more times you hear something, see something, write something, the more you're likely you're going to retain that material. Similarly, by providing the notes after the lecture, are they then less inclined to come to class?
She's still taking notes. Good for you. You don't need to write anything down? Is that true, Melody? You just remember it all? So I go around and say, oh, you wrote. Oh, you're using the back page. Good for you. So you don't think you have to take notes? So I will mock them slightly, right? Because they don't take notes. I said, oh, wonderful. You got it all. You know it all. I've actually invited people to stand up. Now, you explain, Saute. Or you explain the principles of plate presentation. You remember the your lecture on buff is? And they're embarrassed. And you know, I don't apologize for embarrassing people. A little embarrassment's a good thing. I'm not into high stress. I love the way the school has the stress tabs on every refrigerator about how to diminish stress in life. But a little stress, a little anxiety, a little nervousness is wonderful. I have a policy that you can use your laptop in the class anytime, take notes, etc. But if I find you on Facebook or if I find you on any social media whatsoever, I will slam it on your fingers and I will take your laptop or your iPad or your notebook and I will keep it and I will decide when you get it. You know what? They don't believe me until they've gotten really good at pulling their hands out, and I put it down there for the whole class. You know what? No one does it after that. And I can talk from back there just as well as I can talk from back here, right? So, and I teach 120, 150 people. It doesn't matter. They're not. They're only writing notes. So some of that is a little embarrassment. Some of that is pushing the envelope. Some of that is what you got to do. So let's talk about how we can be successful with them. We think we can. There we go. Okay? So one of them is to design the activities carefully. It takes, and I've taught experiential education, stuff like that, it takes more time to design an activity carefully than it does to lecture. Once you've designed it and you build a whole collection of them, you can use them in a variety of different ways. But what you really got to think about is you get them into groups before you give them the instructions. Most people give them instructions and get them into the groups, and you know what? Then they say, what are we supposed to do in the groups? Because they got so anxious about getting into the groups, they forgot what it was about the instructions. So be careful about how you sequence what you do. And plan how you're going to get into groups. You know, I only had an hour. You'll talk to your neighbor, that's fine. But I use all kinds of things. I do height. I do shoe size. I do, put your hand up, other side. I do size of hands. They line up and do size of hands without talking to each other. All of a sudden, they notice the bodies. They start to talk to each other, etc. And then I count off. You're 4 in one group. You're 4 in one group. The worst thing to do is alphabetically, because forever in life they've been in alphabetical order. It's boring, it's no good, etc. I'll put the people in glasses in one group, big glasses in one group, small glasses in another group, contact lenses, right, etc. Use anything you can think of. Your favorite food, your favorite spice, your favorite herb, whatever you want to do. But think about how you're going to get them into groups, and then give them the instructions. And use a variety of activities. Use different kinds of things. But you have to train them how to be in those activities, right? And then you probably all know, but if you don't know, you've just lived through it. At the beginning of this session, declare, pair, share, and air should be your friend. Declare means that they write individually. You then put them with someone else. They share it with someone else, and then they're ready to talk in a large group. What happens is, if you ask a question in a large group, most people will go, or they'll go. They have nothing to write but their to-do list, what they want to call their mother about, etc., but they're going to look really busy, so they're going to get called on, right? Because they don't know what to do, and they haven't been warmed up to talk. So declare, pair, share, and air is a model of getting them to focus their mind, write something down, share it in a small group, and then share it in a large group. And it works, it's a very great model, etc. And always the issue is what they learned from the activity, not what they did in the activity. And there is going to be a sentence at the end of today, one thing you learned about today. So just to practice that. I'm trying to show you the kinds of things that I think make a difference. Okay, problems with assignments. Okay? Okay? The issue is we often give them assignment, but we don't give them enough details. So they don't really know what it's like. And I don't mean the left-hand column is 1.5 inches and the right-hand column is 1 inch, and it should be only in Times New Roman, font size 12. That's trivial stuff. That's format stuff, etc. But how much depth do you want in that analysis to be? How much should they describe of that field trip, etc.? Right? Clearly, you have to say where they went and stuff like that, but give them some structure and some detail, etc. Right? Sometimes one of the problems is concurrent assignments. We had a real problem at the culinary when we started the bachelor's program because all the faculty members would make assignments come at the same time because most of the people who were teaching in the junior and senior year had either taught before or were learning from each other, and everything was midterm and final. So we had a meeting called Preventing Hell Week. And I sat with all the faculty members and I said, we're going to sit down, all of you who are teaching the students in this semester, and we're going to figure out what assignments you all want to give. You give the assignments, you're the faculty members, but we're going to put it in a schedule so that they don't all have 5 papers the same week, or all tests at midterms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you know what? It changed dramatically. The students did much better because it wasn't stress that didn't need to be there. I got into trouble at NYU with the dean because I gave a comprehensive exam 2/3 of the way through the semester. She said, you can't do it, it's not comprehensive. I said, yes, I can do it, and did do it, and it's working fine. And she said, but that's not fair. I said, of course it's fair. They love it because there's nothing else happening that week. And then I have another unit when they do something else. So they have a comprehensive exam 3/4 of the way through the semester. And I said, you can ask all the students. If they like it or don't like it, I do evaluations. I share every evaluation every semester. If you order me to do it differently, I will do it differently. But I can tell you the students are going to be A, unsuccessful, and B, unhappy, because it just loads the pain. And you don't need to load the pain, right? But most people don't think about what's happening in that semester or in that quarter in other courses or other places, et cetera. That's one way to shift it, et cetera. There's a fear of failing because they don't want to fail in that assignment. They don't want to fail at all. Some of them are really working hard, juggling jobs to do it. Some have borrowed a lot of money, et cetera. And we are the kind of faculty members that want them to succeed. So organize the assignments to help them succeed. One of the things that's fascinating is I used to do, when I had this opportunity to teach human beings in a real room, which is I love, as you might tell, I had to come up with, I teach the course that every one of you wants to take and just dreams of. That's why no one else in my department ever wanted to teach it. It's called Research Methods. right? For me, it was fun. I loved the course. So I taught interview techniques on week 1. I taught questionnaire techniques in week 2. And I taught observation week 3. Well, everyone said, you can't do that because you haven't done the nature of research and the quality of research. I said, well, you don't do it that way. Do whatever you want. But to teach observation, I would do something in the class. I would say, I'm going to leave, come back and do a little mini lecture, and you're going to observe my behavior when I come back for those 5 minutes, and then I will leave again, come back, and we'll discuss it. So it was a practice observation situation. I would change my clothes. I'd take one sock off. I'd put the belt on backwards. I would change this from this, et cetera, et cetera. And it was amazing who did notice and who didn't notice. Can't do that with online learning. Better assignment I came up with, they have to go observe someone for an hour, take the notes, and then distill what they saw. And they learned about timing, units of observation, units of measurement, what to look for, what are the criteria, et cetera. And I read fascinating papers. People sitting on the subway, people going to a store, people waiting online to get into a bar. Fascinating stuff, right? So much more interesting assignments for them and for me, because I was forced to do something. Mother Fred had to do something different, et cetera. Right? So, but that was a new assignment. I never talked to these human beings. They took this course. I never was talking to them. It was all online and got great assignments. But I had to write that assignment out several times, answer a bunch of questions about it, write it differently, et cetera, and I had no samples to give them. They did a beautiful job. Now I have samples to teach it online another kind of time. So, strategies for assignments we just did. Right? So we've done that. Okay, here's another way to look at the issues, teaching strategies, and that is to think about, and it's in your book, so you don't have to worry about it, but just to think about, is the focus of your teaching about mastery? Is it about understanding? Is it about the interpersonal relations with them? Or is it about the expressive qualities of what's going to happen? I don't want to spend time on it because I really want to get into teaching styles. And teaching styles is a really interesting question. See, another purple block, another image, shift the mind, transition. You can use your slides or your PowerPoint or your whiteboard to make that transition and to help them. And I don't have to say what the definition is because you can read it faster than I can say it. But you know it's purple, got to be a shift, right? Even in the back corner you can tell, right? Okay, so the issue that's really important in this is thinking about what style you use. And I'm going to talk about 5 styles. So I did a bunch of research on this and found someone who came up with some stuff in the last century, which I still think is a very good model. And in fact, is one of the few that is really referred to, and it's Grash's teaching styles. And there's 5 models. And when you think about them, one of them, which Faith is excellent at, is about the expert. We know a lot of information, and we share that information with our students, and that's really good. If that's all you do, you've missed a whole bunch of things. But don't deny that you know this stuff. You know, no, it's fine, Adam and others, to say, I don't know when the assignments due, because it's a trivial thing for that semester. But if they say, you know, how do I solve this problem with this plate presentation? Well, I don't know. You know, that's an honest question. They're really trying to see how to do this, that it's not stacked, et cetera. So answer the question. You're an expert? Got it. There's a second way, which is to help them think the question through, which is to talk about plate presentation. How are you going to do this with balance? Where's the focus on the plate? What do you want the focus to be on? Do you want it on the protein? Do you want it on the starch that you're using? Do you want it on the range of vegetables, et cetera? So what's the focus of this? And walk them through the process of figuring it out, right? Which is a different style. That's a facilitator style. We do a lot of that kind of stuff, right? Or delegate the style, which is leave them to themselves and let them learn on their own. One of the best things you can do as a culinary faculty member is to stop the critiques and have them do the critiques, and you correct their critiques. Because one thing I can tell you, you will never be sitting on their shoulder for the rest of your life, right? So if they can't learn to critique the product or the presentation, right, without you there, now, that doesn't mean on day one you do it, or early in their program you don't, that you have them do it. But after they've seen you do it, you don't have to do it every time. And that's a way not to get yourself bored or burned out because you're doing yet another examination of crumb and crust and flavor, et cetera, right? Let them do it. And they miss it, correct it. But they learn twice as much from having to do it. And you know what? You say, Michael, you're on critique tomorrow. You're going to be, Melanie, you're going to be in critique the next day, and you're going to be on the critique the next day. Guess what they're going to do? They'll be so prepared for those classes you won't know what hit them. But it also helps them hear from each other that they can do a critique of the product and what's right. They can do it in dining room setup. They can do it in how wine is poured or opened. They can do it in what the station setup is like. They can do it in cooking model. They can do it in mise en place. Some chef instructors have actually had students go around the room and inspect all the station setup before people start. Ooh, if you're coming around, I'm going to have my station set up really good. I can get away with covering it up for the chef, but to embarrass myself in front of my peers, ooh, right? And you're not doing it to embarrass them. You're doing it to help them learn that set of skills. It's another kind of style. We do a lot of personal model. We tell stories about what we've done. When I was in the industry, this happened, and here's how I dealt with it. When I was in this situation, here's how I did. That's a great style, right? And some people are very big on rules and regulations, et cetera. I've been at many a school, evaluating faculty or doing programs and stuff like that, et cetera, and they line up, and they're inspected before they're allowed in the kitchen. Or they're allowed in the kitchen set up, and they go outside, and they're inspected before they go back in the kitchen. Literally head to toe. Does that have a message about importance? Does that have a message about professionalism? Does that have a message about clean uniforms? Absolutely. And after you've done it for 3 sessions, save yourself and have someone else do it. Have the steward who's assigned that day to do it. Or pick someone at random. So don't tell Nathan ahead of time, just tell, today, Nathan, you're inspecting. And all of a sudden he looks at his uniform and like, oh, I'm inspecting and mine isn't as clean as it could be. But if you told him ahead his would be perfect, well, guess what? Everyone, and it just involves them in the activity. It involves them in the learning. It makes a difference in energizing what happens. Now, in the reality of life, none of us does just one of them. We all use them in different clusters. But what's interesting, and this is my adaptation, I mean, the clusters came out of his work researching a bunch of faculty members. It wasn't in culinary arts, but this is very applicable to culinary arts. But if you look at this diagram and you look at the situation, you can see there are some people who do mostly formal authority, rules, regulations, standard, et cetera, and I'm the expert. Right? Those are the teachers we didn't like. Those are the teachers we didn't want to be with. And there are some facilitate, do a personal model, also expert, but still they're the sole authority in those situations, right? And they are the teacher. And we all know to bow to the chef instructor as he walks in the room, right? Michael wouldn't let me kiss his ring today. He's losing his touch. But every time Michael Biggs comes, I kiss his ring because he's a chef instructor and a senior chef instructor, and I'm just a suit. And he knows that. I do Michael Carmel as well, so, but he's not in white, so I don't have to kiss his ring today. I can get away with it. But as opposed to shared authority, which is a different cluster, in which you're really doing a lot of facilitating, you're doing a lot of delegating, you're really trying to help them learn something and pushing their questions, right? Notice that if you want to have a really strong relationship with someone, you want to do a lot of delegating, facilitating, be an expert, because it's in the lower corner of shared authority and emotionally warm. You choose what you want to do. You know your personality. We started this whole thing discussing what kind of teacher you are, what kind of teacher you were, what kind of teacher you want to be. Think about your teaching style. The reflection that you do on your teaching style. Just take these 5 models and mull them over and see if you're burned out in one class because you get caught in the expert model all the time, can you shift out of that model and you find yourself re-energized and the dynamics of the classroom re-energized. See if you're doing all this personal connection and you feel this emotional warmth with your students, et cetera, but you're way behind in the curriculum because you're doing so much loving of them that you never get the food cooked, right? And part of what we want to do is we want to teach them professionalism and productivity. It's just wonderful to make gorgeous sauté and 3 plates, but in 4 hours, if you can only do 3 plates, it's wonderful. You'll be great at home, but don't join the profession, right? You know, I mean, and if they can't talk about sauté, that's a problem too. So don't let them get away with nicey-nicey. Push them hard and show them you care. One of the speeches I give when I start teaching, and I'm loving teaching. I was the dean of the faculty administrator. I've been in a number of programs, et cetera. It's fun to be just back in the classroom, which I've been for the last 10 years. I really, really enjoy it. But I give a speech at the beginning of every class that I'm a bimodal teacher. And I'm careful how I say that because people think, is he manic depressive? And is we got all this kind of stuff, et cetera. But one of the problems I have with students, if I don't explain it, is that I have very high standards. And I say, you've been accepted in a graduate program, undergraduate program at NYU. NYU is one of the toughest universities to get into for undergraduates because everyone wants to be in the village. It is the happening place. We have 24 sites abroad for everyone, and everyone's expected to study abroad. And we've got we have a study abroad program in our degrees every summer in different places, Prague, Berlin, et cetera. So everyone wants to come to the school. And we have a number of people for the 3 graduate programs who come from all over the world. About 3/4 of our students are actually international students. I said, so there's no excuse for you're not being able to do good work. And I won't tolerate bad work, but I'm really easygoing and I'm really friendly. And I like sense of humor, and I'll tease you, and I'm affectionate towards you. Not inappropriately affectionate, but affectionate, et cetera. And one of the things I say is, if you're working an assignment and it's due next Tuesday, and you need extra time, send me an email. You've got an automatic week extension, no problem. Because if they're really late at the assignment, but they're really into it and want to do well, give them a couple of days. I'm not going to read them all the next morning at 8 a.m. anyways, so let them have the time to do it. And they feel honored that I realize the difficulty, whatever, et cetera. I said, don't tell me 5 days after the paper was due that you need some more time. You're responsible for telling me ahead of time. But if you want an extension, not a problem. If it's a quiz, et cetera, not a problem. I tell all the students you can't talk about the quiz to anyone until I hand them all back, or a test. And they honor that pretty well. They're very good. Right? So I have you 7 days. Now, I'm not coming down to your apartment on Saturday night at 9 o'clock to administer the exam. So we have to find something in that week, but you get 7 days. There's no one else in the program who gives that easy, right? But the issue is show me what you know, and I'll give you all kinds of flexibility. But you know it or you don't know it. It's good work or it's bad work, and don't play. And so it's very hard for them to see a teacher who's a personal model and interpersonal skills who's got really a focus on high standards. Question over here. Nathan.
Do you have a minimum amount of time? Because if I give a student an assignment 4 weeks, 6 weeks in advance, and they come to me and they say, I need a week extension, I kind of mull that over because they've already had a month to do it, where if it's maybe like a week or 2, I could understand giving it that week extension. I was just wondering if you do it for all.
All the assignments are in the syllabus. My syllabus for every course I teach is anywhere between 20 and 25 pages because I have a detail about every assignment they will do. Okay. If it still is a week out, it's a week out because stuff gets in the way. I mean, I've got a number of people who are juggling jobs whose roommate was close to depression the night before or 2 nights before, so they stayed up all night, whose parents own a building and there was a plumbing problem and they had to cut. I mean, there's 1,000, and they're real. And they'll bring me the doctor. I said, I trust you. I totally trust you. I don't need a doctor's note. I don't need your friend to write a note that they were depressed, et cetera. I trust you. You got 7 days. After 7 days, it's 0. And I had a student who did this one semester. And the class was on a Monday night. And then she didn't show up. She said, I actually have an interview the next morning, a major job interview and stuff like that. And I said, okay, so you have a whole week to do it. I understand, not a problem, because she had to write stuff for the interview. She had to do all this stuff, et cetera. Then she wanted to go, they wanted her to come to Boston for an interview during the week. I said, fine. You have until Monday at 6 p.m., right? Then 0. Well, she wrote me on Sunday night and said, well, I can't take the test tomorrow because the woman who was going to lend me her book, since I have not bought the book this semester, didn't show up at the library to give me the book, so I need more time. I said, you have 7 days. You've had 7 days. I'll be in my office from 8:30 in the morning till 6 o'clock tomorrow. If you don't come by to take the exam, it's okay. You got a 0. Love to see you next semester. I'm not angry. I'm not upset. Here's the consequence of your decision. Oh, she wrote the dean, this isn't fair and stuff like that. The dean wrote back and said, what are you talking about? He's got a very liberal policy. It's very consistent. He does it all the time. And there's no anger. Oh, this is not fair. I mean, how dumb can you be to say to the teacher you didn't buy the book, right? And that's why you can't take the quiz, right? But so, you know what happened? Next semester, she didn't take the course and came back the second semester of her senior year to take the course because she figured I would disappear. What she didn't realize is that I'm the only one who taught that course, so she had no choice. And she came to class, and I said, oh, it's wonderful to see you this semester. I hope we have a good time. And she was like, I don't have any ill will. This is a decision she made. This is the consequence she made. She's a nice person, you know. Don't ask me to write a recommendation about her professionalism, but that's okay. She's smarter than that, right? So, yeah, I will still. Question? Absolutely, I do that, and I also have a written on the front of your notebooks is my email address, mayoconsulting@aol.com. I realize and I apologize that AOL is dead in the doornail. It's better than Yahoo, but not much. But because I've been using that address for the last 30 years, computers have been around, and since I incorporated and launched my business full-time, I still have that address. I also use fred.mayo@nyu.edu. Send me a note from either of those. I'll send you a copy of the syllabus. I'll send you the policy on extensions, a page long about policy of extensions and papers and tests and stuff like that. Anything you want, I'll be glad to provide it for you. That's why the response is there. That's why the stuff is there. So when you want to think about your insight, about your teaching style, remember, keep calm and be awesome. Think about what you might like to change. Anything you're doing is already good. We're talking about polishing diamonds here. We're not talking about people who don't know anything about teaching. We're talking about rekindling the interest. We're talking about making it fun again. We're talking about adding magic, etc. So remember that what works in one situation doesn't work with another. You know, on Tuesday it doesn't work. On Thursday it does work. It's the same group. You're not crazy. In some semesters, things work really well. In some semesters, they work really poorly. You're not crazy. Remember that the context. Sometimes it's the middle of October, and it works beautifully, and it gets close to November, and it doesn't work. That's okay. Realize it. Notice it. Reflect on your teaching. And give yourself the wisdom to realize that it's contextual a lot. It's not just you. Sometimes it's them. Sometimes it's the context. Sometimes it's the situation. One of my favorite food quotes is, knowledge is understanding that tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting tomato in a fruit salad. But it takes good minds to be straight about that kind of stuff, etc. So, any other questions? And on the last page, or the next to the last page, which is page 8, there's a line for you. One thing I learned this morning. So we will take a moment to pause and reflect and finish that sentence. Who would like to share that sentence? Someone who hasn't spoken yet. Please. I can be more flexible if I'm clear with the parameters up front. Since we're close to Canada, some French. Please. Sir, in the back row.
I learned to make better use of students as evaluators, assessors, and enforcers.
Evaluators, assessors, and enforcers. That sort of sounds like an EVA, right? Doesn't it good? And you,
Mine was in lecture classes. Usually, what would happen is you get to a point, you see you're done, and you say, "Okay, guys, we'll finish. We'll continue on." So to really have a closure to each session and
Absolutely.
do a review, which I have not been doing.
I try to bring everything to a closure, you know, and they, when I have large class, I have a ball that I throw around, as you've seen, and I do that, and then I throw it to someone, you know, what did you learn today, or something you surprised you today, or something you discovered today, and then you pick the next person. And what I'll do to keep it, ask you, what's your favorite number between 1 and 30?
17.
17, so we will now have 17 people answer that, but not everyone in the class. And it changes times, different ways of doing it, so it keeps the variety going. Keeps me sane and keeps them guessing. Always I want them a little bit guessing. Any other?
Said give time to reflect.
Give time to reflect, wonderful. It's the Coca-Cola theory of teaching, right? Pause. One more? Please.
Harmonicas are good.
I like warm up to talk.
I like warm up to talk. Good. I got one for you in Spanish. So thank you very much for your attention. I appreciate your listening.